The Ouija board is a victim of pop culture. I'm Ruby Ruse, this is Fairy Fortunes, and I'm here to bring you the truth.
If you would like to learn about fairy folklore, delve into modern fairy faith spirituality, and explore fun and fanciful fairy-themed events, please subscribe to Fairy Fortunes for new videos every Friday.
So if you want to communicate with a fairy spirit, how might you do that? Well, it just so happens there's a tool for that. Right, Bunny? Let's just get to the rabbit in the room.
Bunny Mom!
The Ouija board is an occult tool that can be used for spirit communication and also for divination and oracle work, but it has a terrible reputation. So I'm here to give you some facts about the Ouija board so that you can make your own decisions about it. Contrary to popular belief, the Ouija board is not an ancient occult tool. It is distinctly American in origin. It was designed and mass-produced by the Kenyard Novelty Company in 1891 as a family board game toy. Charles Kenyard was attempting to capitalize on the very popular spiritualism movement that was occurring in America. Spiritualism, if you're not familiar with it, became extremely popular in the United States of America in 1848, when the Fox sisters became very famous as mediums as they were communicating with a spirit that they called Mr. Splitfoot. Now, Charles Kenyard was not a spiritualist himself, but one of his investors had a sister-in-law who was very interested in the movement and was a medium herself. Her name was Helen Bond. And Helen Bond, actually, is the person responsible for the name Ouija. Many people think that the name Ouija comes from the words oui from French, which means yes, and ja in German, that means yes. That is actually not the case. It was Helen Bond who came up with the name. She was actually using the board, and the question that they were trying to come up with at the time was what to name this novelty item to be marketed and mass-produced. And the board itself spelled out Ouija. When they asked the board what that term meant, the board responded with good luck. However, there are some speculation that the word Ouija is actually a misspelling of the name Ouida. Ouida was a very popular feminist writer during this time period in 1891, and Helen Bond was a huge fan of hers. So many people speculate that the term Ouija is actually a play on the name of Helen Bond's favorite author. Now, while the Ouija board was marketed as a family board game toy and novelty item, before it could obtain a patent, it had to be proven to work. And of course, it did, otherwise we wouldn't be here today with this video. Whether or not the Ouija board works has never been in dispute, and it's actually been the subject of a few different scientific studies. Many scientists believe that the Ouija board is an example of something called ideomotor action. Now, a very simple explanation of what that is that it is a classification of involuntary motions. However, these involuntary motions are due to a preconceived notion or a prior set of expectations. So in essence, when you use a Ouija board, what scientists think is going on is that somewhere in your subconscious, you already have the answers to the questions that are being asked with the Ouija board. Another really interesting scientific study was conducted by the British Columbia Visual Cognition Lab. This is a fascinating study. What they found is that there was a significant increase in correct answers when using the Ouija board. Now, this could be ideomotor action in that people are using the Ouija board to tap into their subconscious and being able to access that subconscious information. But there were other implications from this study. The Ouija board may actually show how individual minds process and interpret information, how this information is stored, and how it might be creatively accessed. This has amazing implications for degenerative cognitive diseases such as Alzheimer's. So instead of being afraid of Ouija boards, we actually could be using Ouija boards to access our subconscious minds and possibly even prevent early onset dementia and Alzheimer's disease. In 1891, when the Ouija board was first introduced into the American market, it was a very popular novelty item, and it was used as a family board game. People of all ages partook in this novelty item. It was seen as family friendly. Spiritualism was not looked on as this terrible thing to be avoided. Many Christians actually partook in spiritualism because people of that time did not see anything negative about contacting spirits and working with the dead. In 1920, Norman Rockwell actually featured the Ouija board in one of his very iconic Saturday Evening Posts. In 1951, the Ouija board was shown on an episode of the I Love Lucy show. The I Love Lucy show was a wholesome, family-friendly show in the 1950s. In this conservative time period, Lucy and Desi Arnaz didn't even share a bed on camera. But yet the Ouija board was featured in an episode. It's called The Seance. I'll have some links for you down below. In 1967, the Ouija board was more popular than the Monopoly board game. And 1 year later, in 1968, the Ouija board was again featured on television in the very popular sitcom Bewitched. That episode was Tabitha's Craigie Spell. So in 1968, the Ouija board was still considered wholesome family fun. So what happened? Well, in 1973, a Catholic priest was forced to wield the power of his faith to free a little girl who was trapped inside her own body by a demon she had unknowingly unleashed unto the world through the power of the Ouija board. I just described the Exorcist movie that was released in 1973. I'm sorry, Reagan is not a real person. She's fictional. She's a fictional person. I'm sorry. There was no demon unleashed with the Ouija board. But that is what started the mass hysteria with the Ouija boards. Now, if you look on the web, you will find modern instances of mass hysteria surrounding Ouija board and spirit communication games. But this phenomenon didn't occur until after 1973, when The Exorcist was released. Much like how taking a shower became a traumatizing event after the movie Psycho was released, this is what happened to the Ouija board after 1973. People did not experience any adverse reactions to Ouija boards prior to the release of that movie. And it was after 1973 that we saw other movies that featured the Ouija board as this portal to the demonic unknown. Now, with the story of The Exorcist, the Ouija board actually plays a very minor role. It's simply a catalyst that's mentioned in one scene, and then we embark on the journey of Reagan and her mother and the Catholic priest who's desperate to save her. But it was after this movie that we see movies that are being devoted expressly to the dangers of the Ouija board. The first one that I can think of is the 1986 Witchboard. Unlike The Exorcist, where it is simply a catalyst action, Witchboard, the movie, focuses entirely on the dangers of the Ouija board. And it is from that 1986 movie, The Witchboard, that we then see a whole new outcropping of movies and pop culture that is expressly saying that Ouija boards are evil and to be avoided. It seems like everyone has a third cousin's fiance's sister who's had some kind of demonic possession or negative reaction to a Ouija board. But the truth of the matter is that these negative connotations and horrible stories can be traced directly back to 1973 and the pop culture phenomenon that followed the release of the movie The Exorcist. But let's hear from you. Have you had a negative reaction to the Ouija board? Leave your story in the comments below. Or, do you think that you would like to use a Ouija board to contact the fairy spirits? Let me know your thoughts. And with that, have a magical day.